I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs are proud to present the Marauder's Map.
If you succeed tonight, more than one innocent life may be spared.
Expecto Patronum!
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. Today we're doing chapter 22, Owl Post Again. We have Anna here.
Hello!
Can you believe we're closing out Prisoner of Azkaban?
No,
That's crazy.
I'm so sad.
I know, that
Can we
just
start
flew
over?
by. Yeah. Before we get to the book, though, I wanted to shout myself out, oddly. I have recently done a guest spot on the Restricted Section podcast, which came out this week, September 14th. We did Chapter 3 of Order of the Phoenix, The Advanced Guard, which is a really cool chapter, so check it out. Thank you to host Christina for having me on. And again, that's the Restricted Section podcast. So
It's a fun podcast.
it's a fun podcast. It was a lot of fun doing it, so thank you to Christina, and go check them out. So yeah, we have the final episode, or the final chapter of Prisoner of Azkaban. And I haven't read this book in a while, so I'm thinking Owl Post again. Okay, well, the first Owl Post wasn't really a whole lot happening there, so this will probably be a quick chapter where we can get through and then get to our book wrap-up. No.
There was a lot to cover in that owl post, Dan.
There was a lot to cover in this chapter. So I'm just going to give a brief rundown of what happened. We get a continuation of that Snape Fudge conversation, a little bit more that we hadn't heard of once they leave the hospital wing, which I loved that Snape Fudge conversation in its entirety. It was just really cool to kind of see them interact.
It was very cool to see them interact, and I feel like it was a very small conversation that showed a very large, part of who Snape was as a person, but,
Yes.
that might have just been me.
We had a Peeve sighting, which is always fun. I feel like I have to point that out. I feel like in my head he's more present than he actually is, but we haven't heard from him in a while.
I feel like it's extra exciting to point out Peeves anytime because he's so absent from the movies.
He's such a wild card, too.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about in this chapter a little bit. But we get Albus being the smooth dude that he is, finding out that his little grand plan with the time turner worked. He's quite happy with himself. Snape finds out that Black escaped. Not happy. Not happy about that. Kind of goes off the reservation there a little bit. So much so that Lupin has to resign.
Don't even. I'm gonna get angry.
We'll talk about Lupin's resignation, but he returns the cloak and the map to Harry before the end of this chapter. Dumbledore and Harry, per tradition at this point, have an end of the book.
Oh, yeah. Is it a Harry Potter book without a Harry Dumbledore rundown?
Yeah, they just have a little heart-to-heart, if you will, and Dumbledore, per usual, drops a ton of knowledge on Harry, and Harry's like, wait, what? And, side note, Gryffindor wins the House Cup for the third year in a row.
Shocker.
Yep. Hermione officially dropping 2 classes, Muggle Studies and Divination, which...
Necessary.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think anybody should... Didn't she say she got 140% on the Muggle Studies?
Oh, no. She got 322%.
Oh, sorry, 320. I don't even know how that's...
112% was her original Charms final in Sorcerer's
Oh,
Stone.
my bad. Maybe Elizabeth can drop some knowledge on how someone can possibly get 300-something percent.
Yeah, that can entirely be up to her. I'm not going there.
I don't even...
Heavy extra credit, right?
That poor teacher that probably had to read paragraphs upon paragraphs that had nothing to do with what the question was. Oh, that probably took her hours. Unless she had a time turner. Anyway, Quidditch World Cup is mentioned. Just the idea of a Quidditch World Cup. We have the real World Cup coming up here in a couple of months in November, I think. That'll be cool. Quidditch, still, we will refer to it as Quidditch for the book purposes here, but as we all know, it's been changed to quad ball officially if you're talking about the real life sport. Anyway, we find out that Sirius actually sent Harry the Firebolt to Hermione's glee.
I would have repped that in a lot more if I were Hermione.
Yes. I'm sure between the pages, I'm sure there's a lot of... Yeah.
That train ride home.
Every time anything is questioned from her, Remember that time I was right about Sirius giving it a... Yeah.
Do you think maybe just like any time Harry has a Quidditch match and has to pull out the fireball?
Oh, remember that fireball that I was right?
Who gave that to you?
Mm-hmm. 100%. Which I have a question about that, which we can get to later. Sirius came in clutch with the permission to Hogsmeade.
Yeah, that was cool.
And this is the Owl Post part. He sends a letter to Harry at the end with some cool stuff in it. And then I love the quote that Harry says at the end to Vernon.
Oh, I know, it's so good.
Which is, like, who's writing you a letter? Oh, it's my godfather. You don't have a godfather.
He's broken out of wizard prison and he's on the run. He likes to keep in touch with me, though. Keep up with my news. Check I'm happy. And grinning broadly at the look of horror on Uncle Vernon's face, Harry set off towards the station exit.
Slick move. Slick move by Harry.
Don't you just see him kind of like bursting through like doors and kind of like the hero shot with like butterflies and clouds?
That is an image that I can see. But yeah, so that's essentially the chapter in a nutshell, which sounds like not a lot happened, but it did. We start this chapter as Harry and Hermione get back to the hospital wing and find the Dumbledore's back to them as he's about to close and lock the hospital wing doors.
Right.
That conversation, Albus just turns around and has this huge smile on his face. Like, I have just won everything. And we were talking a little bit about it in our pre-game session here. But we had a little bit of a debate between, did Dumbledore kind of pre-plan this because he knew that there was a time turner in play? Or did he wing it while the events were going on from Hagrid's hut? Or what was your suggestion? I
think he winged it from the moment Sirius told him everything. Like, my understanding is Sirius told him about, like, the Animagus forms and just, like, the whole rundown that we got from in the Shrieking Shack. And I think that's when, I'll give you maybe he had Buckbeak's rescue pre-planned a little bit. Like, he had some sort of kernel of a thought with the Time Turner, oh, we can save Beaky. But I think the whole, what we just read, the past two chapters, that started from the moment he left Sirius.
I like it. I can get behind that. That gives Dumbledore roughly, like, just minutes, essentially, to formulate this whole thing, given he himself just received groundbreaking news that would stun anybody.
Yeah, that's kind of Gryffindor. When you think about it, I mean, that's essentially what Harry does in, like, everything he's thrust into. He kind of comes up with a plan on the spot.
Yeah, it's a very... This is comparing Dumbledore to Harry, which you really can't do as far as, like...
Well, there's
coming
a
up
bit
with
of
plans.
an age gap.
There is. Yeah, Albus, to think that he got this groundbreaking news, which, by the way, proves that he was wrong initially in his assessment of the whole situation. Because he thought that it was like everybody else thought.
Yeah.
So for him to realize, like, oh shoot, I was wrong. Oh shoot, how often am I actually wrong on something? I should probably do something about this.
How much going on at Hogwarts do I actually not know going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and then he's, like, impressed.
Yeah.
And, like, on several different levels.
Maybe that's the real reason he wanted to save Sirius, because he was impressed Sirius got so much over him.
Honestly, that would be a very Jude Law Dumbledore move.
Yes.
Of, like, you know what? You got me? I owe you one.
I'll save you.
Yeah. But no, that would be a very quick timeline of hearing all of that groundbreaking, shocking news. And instead of being, like, in a stunned stupor, like probably most of the world would be in.
Yeah, Dumbledore doesn't really do stunned stupor.
No, he quickly figures out, like, okay, this is what I have to do now. Oh, by the way, there is a time turner in play. How can I use this? Okay. All on the walk from, like, Flitwick's office to the hospital wing. As I have in my notes, smooth dude, that guy.
For sure. My question about, like, walks from hospital wings was, like, and Harry asked Hermione and she just doesn't really give him an answer, but, like, what do you think would have happened if the two of them hadn't made it back before Dumbledore locked that door?
I think the question would be if they got there so late that Dumbledore was not there to receive them.
Right.
That would potentially be a problem.
Right.
That'd be a real big problem, that Dumbledore doesn't know what exactly went down. He can't get them back into the office. So then when Snape and Fudge come in and find them outside of the hospital wing.
There's no proof that they didn't have something to do with it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing would go up in smoke. Then it'd be like, okay, now does McGonagall get in trouble? Does Dumbledore get in trouble? Because
Do Harry and Hermione get expelled?
yeah.
Do 13-year-old wizards get thrown into Azkaban?
I feel like Dumbledore or McGonagall, Dumbledore specifically, I think would take the fall so that Harry does not get expelled. And he'd figure out some way of be like, blame me, I'm the guy at fault here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would not go. And they just made it within seconds because, and I mentioned Peeves at the beginning in my rundown. That is a wild card. Because you don't know what he's going to do, where he's going to go. And
if he had seen them,
it would have been all kinds of problems. So that was kind of the I keep saying, the wild card where you just don't know how it's going to go. You hope that he just scoots on by and you can go do your thing. But if he lingers, oh boy, like it's not good. Yeah. Which I think was the whole point of having Peeves in that little bit, was just like, here's a potential,
Are they really going to make it?
Exactly. But I loved it. Then you get the Snape and Fudge finding out that Black escaped. And you just got off of this chapter with Fudge saying nothing but compliments about Snape. Which, how do you feel about, I think I made a point in the last chapter. We had the imagery of Sirius floating Snape through the air, hitting him on like the ceiling or the stairs.
It's my favorite version of Snape presented to me in all 7 books.
Fair enough. Sirius obviously didn't care for Snape's well-being. Snape, though, to his credit, dare I say, did not float Sirius and hit him on every branch on the way out. He put him on a stretcher.
Yeah, and then was really concerned about whether or not Dumbledore would cause a scene or kick up a fuss about whether or not Sirius's soul was sucked out of him. I mean, Snape was eager at the beginning of this chapter to make sure that the Dementor's kiss took place.
Not just this chapter. He was eager throughout, going all the way back several chapters ago.
Yeah, obviously. But, and then the way he loses it completely when the chance of Sirius' soul being sucked out of him is taken away from him. I mean, to me, this whole, 5-minute little snippet in Snape's life just shows that unless you are a certain someone, he doesn't really have much regard for human life, in my opinion. But
I think he doesn't have a great regard for this one individual's particular life. He obviously has held a grudge against Sirius for a very long time, which we've talked about before as being, however, Sirius almost got him killed, or depending on how you want to phrase it, worse, being a werewolf, or whatever. Not a great situation. So the animosity between the two is real, and it's legit. And it's obviously still there from both sides.
Oh yeah, from both sides.
So
I know.
They really both haven't really let their school boy nature go. But anyway, Snape is...
James Widow.
Snape is off the reservation mad, which Fudge is like... I love this quote. Fudge is like, Dumbledore, you might have to watch out for him.
Oh my god,
I have to watch out
loved
for him.
That quote.
Like, okay, Fudge.
I read that and I was like, oh, Cornelius. Okay.
Snape does not get what he wants. He immediately goes to, it's Potter. Potter, I don't care how, but Potter had something to do with this. Which, obviously, not wrong. not wrong.
Not wrong at all. But oh my god, Snivellus, take it down a notch.
Yeah, I think it's obviously coming out of a vindictive point of view. It's not like he obviously doesn't know how or why or what happened, but Potter has to be involved because of he has this thing with Harry. Fine.
Well, he also is logical. He's been there the past 2 years. He was in the Shrieking Shack. He knows Harry.
Shouldn't he... This basically tells us one fact, then. He doesn't know about the Time Turner.
Yes. Agreed.
So,
I think I've come to the conclusion that the only people who know about the Time Turner are McGonagall and Dumbledore.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't know how I feel about that.
Agreed. Yeah.
So...
Yeah. I don't remember that part of it. Like, I don't know if I've ever had that thought as I was reading.
Again, Elizabeth could probably fill us more in on how a school administration works. But I feel like if...
I mean, to be fair, that is
if a
the
student...
headmaster and the deputy headmistress.
Sure.
So that is the principal, vice principal.
Right.
I'm sure principals and vice principals don't share everything with every member of their staff.
One of them is a teacher, though.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine, like, if you have a, for lack of a better term in the real, it's like a special accommodation for a student.
Right, yeah.
I feel like all of the teachers would have to be then aware that the student has a special accommodation.
You would think.
So maybe
you
not
also
like...
think somebody as logical as Snape. I know Hermione's not in his house, but you really don't think somebody as smart as Snape at some point had the thought, how's this girl getting all of her classes?
Well, that's the other thing. They have to know her schedule, right?
Yeah. You would think.
And it's not like they're not talking about Hermione
Right.
in, like, a student lounge. Like,
teachers sit in that student
100%.
lounge complaining about Hermione Granger.
Like, you don't think the Muggle Studies teacher goes in there and goes, this girl just got a 300 whatever % on my test, and Trelawney's like, whatever, she bounced out of mine.
Class.
And then, like, but then wouldn't somebody like Snape or Flitwick just start thinking, like, wait a minute, she's got that, and that, and that, and that, and that, and that. Wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
And no one would say a word? Like, I feel like this is a little fishy.
Or when Hermione slept through cheering charms. You really think Flitwick didn't have a red flag right there? Yeah.
Exactly. Or in her explanation for missing cheering charms, something didn't come up.
Right, yeah.
Like, it seems a little suspect.
Yeah.
But anyway. But clearly Snape was not aware of it. Because I feel like if he had known that a time turner was in play...
this would be done for. He would absolutely call them out. Dumbledore's whole big plan would have been revealed.
Which I do have some more on this in the spoiler section that I want to get to.
Okay.
Because at some point, Snape, he's such a smart guy, he's got to figure this out on some level at some point. It clearly wasn't now.
I mean, I was just going to say, probably not in this moment, because he's clearly not thinking rationally.
Clearly not now.
He's a little...
But I feel like he might
batty.
Start to figure this out at some point, and we can talk about that in the spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so Snape is obviously disgruntled, and he lets slip.
Oh, don't even talk to me about that.
Let's slip.
My note is inappropriate.
Quote
you have
unquote.
to give an adult rating for it.
Quote unquote, accidentally lets the Slytherins know that Lupin is a werewolf.
He's so petty.
It's a very petty move. It's a very petty move. And Lupin is such a...
He's so classy.
Classy's a good word for it. He's such a classy guy about it, and just like, whatever, this probably... it's probably the right move, because after last night, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah, I think he was going to resign no matter what after.
Yeah, I think that's probably the call. And Dumbledore can hide a lot. I don't think he can hide that when and the Minister of Magic knows. It's going to be hard to...
Does he?
I think... Snape told him, didn't he? In the whole thing?
Oh, touche. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So, at that point, how do you slide that under the rug? It's a really hard thing to do, even for Dumbledore. So, it was... The writing was on the wall for Lupin anyway, leaving, for reasons that we can also get into the spoiler section.
Yeah, there's that too.
there's that too. But...
his exit was so anticlimactic, though.
Yeah.
Just like a handshake with Dumbledore, hitch that Grandilo tank underneath my arm and walk on out. Like, I don't know, it makes me sad. After such a great year for him, powerful book for him, it's just like...
We have the plot point of him giving back the cloak and the map, which is always good.
Yes.
Harry has both of those now in his possession.
What would you do without those two items?
I don't know. Those are two, like, clutch things. He's like, as now I'm not your professor, I have zero guilty, like, feelings giving this back to you. Anyway, and then we get into this wonderful conversation between Dumbledore and Harry. Where they discuss, where Harry, like, again, Harry chooses just the perfect moments to just blurt out every secret he's ever held.
I know, right?
he chooses this moment of all moments to just be like, hey, prof.
Well, I think he literally had forgotten about it until this moment and was like, oh, hey, this is probably important and you should probably know about this.
Right. So they get talking about Trelawney's prediction, which Dumbledore has the line of like, well, that makes her predictions down to 2 now that have like...
Should give her a pay rise.
Yeah. It's like, oh, Trelawney getting paid up in here. Harry deserves an A just for giving her the little money on the side. Anyway, so that was an interesting conversation. And then they talk about a really interesting conversation about Peter Pettigrew. And
yes. I really like that conversation, though for more spoilery reasons than...
Fair enough. Yeah. But the part that I like about it is we just talked about Dumbledore being a little bit more advanced than Harry in the whole planning part of this. And you see it here is Harry's narrow-minded in that, like, why would I even want Pettigrew to be...
Well, can you blame a 13-year-old? I wouldn't want that connection to the person who killed my parents.
But when you have a person the stature of Dumbledore being like, do not overlook this fact, you should be a little bit more being like, oh, wow, Dumbledore's really driving this home. It must be, like, something I should consider at least. But doesn't he throw in the line of... he throws James in his face at some point, doesn't he?
Yeah. Oh, my God, I loved it. He said that he knew James very well at school and after, and he was confident that James would have also saved Pettigrew's life.
So you see how I do it there, folks? That's how it's hosting. That's called hosting. It's, you know, your guest loves James Potter, and you toss up the softball to let them knock it out of the park. Yeah. I like how Dumbledore kind of uses James to kind of get Harry back to center a little bit. And I also loved the line about... even though it confused Harry, because a lot of things Dumbledore says confuses Harry.
I know, but it's such a good
It's
line.
Beautiful. He goes, you did see your father last night. You found him inside yourself. Which is...
It's
so good.
Oh my God, it's so good.
It's such a great line. Yeah. And there's been a couple related to James particularly, like when Harry says prongs and just goes to touch the stag. It's a great moment, and this is a great moment, and...
and the other line Dumbledore has leading up to you found James inside yourself is, I think a lot of people think of it as Sirius's line, because they gave it to Gary Oldman in the book, but they made it not as good. Dumbledore's quote here is really good.
I did want to actually talk to you about that, because, and I was going to save this for the book wrap-up, but we could talk about it now since you mentioned it. I did want to talk book versus movie a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Because just reading this chapter alone, there were a lot of quotes taken directly from the like word for word from the book and put into the movie. Different people said it, but the words were there. Specifically, Lupin and Dumbledore. They gave Lupin actually some Dumbledore lines in that conversation.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't tell you the last time I watched the movie.
This Lupin really doesn't have a whole lot in this chapter. It's just a relatively brief interaction between the two, and then Lupin bounces out. Mm-hmm. In the movie, it's a more extended scene between the two, and he gets some of Dumbledore's lines. And then you just pointed at the one where it's like...
Oh yeah, you think the dead we have loved ever truly leave us? You think that we don't recall them more clearly than ever in times of great trouble?
Yep.
Your father is alive in you, Harry.
They obviously changed some of the words. But yeah, obviously that was given to Sirius and Gary Oldman's. But I can't fault the movie. At least I can't fault the producers for making that call because you have Gary Oldman.
Well, you also need to fast track the relationship between Harry and
as a screenwriting thing, it makes total sense to do that. Yeah. And you're not going to have Gary Oldman to just have him there for the Shrieking Shack scene and then send him off on Buckbeak. Like what happens? You're going to give him a moment. Yeah. So I get the production of it. The big issue that I think you have with book versus movie is the Shrieking Shack and then cutting out almost the entirety of Lupin's monologue, which gets a lot of background.
So I also have a major issue with the casting of David Thewlis as Remus Lupin, too.
Do you have a casting? I'm putting you on the spot.
Ewan McGregor.
Wow, that was quick.
Oh my god, I have dreamed of Ewan McGregor as Remus Lupin since they were casting this film, Dan. I wanted it so bad.
I'm tossing this around in my head. I mean, obviously, Ewan McGregor in anything I am a fan of. because you can't not be. As Lupin, interesting choice. I'm thinking of him as, so if anybody's watched the Kenobi series, I'm thinking of him as more of the rundown version of Kenobi that you see at the beginning of that. Yeah. And I'm trying to put that into, like, Lupin. Could that work? Maybe. I think Ewan McGregor could probably make it work.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I mean, Thewlis is a great actor in his own right.
Nothing against David Thewlis. That's just,
interesting.
Anyway, that was a side tangent, sorry.
I mean, I'm never going to argue Ewan McGregor in anything, but that's a whole other side conversation. But anyway, those were some of the book versus movie things, because I noticed it a lot in this chapter of book versus movie. I'm like, wow, these were word for word right out of the book in the movie. It's just different characters having those lines.
Yeah, I mean, the Gary Oldman one is recited often enough that it stuck out to me, but it's been too long since I watched the movie for anything else to have stuck out to me.
At some point, we'll probably add in some episodes of some movie commentaries from us. It'll be, I'm sure this one might particularly
have to be parental advisory.
we could up the parental advisory. Anyway, we get to the Sirius letter that he sends Harry. Yes. And we find out that Sirius did indeed send him the firebolt, which Hermione said with glee. Like, I told you. But here's my thing about it, though. Sirius gets into the whole, like, I put the order in your name, but they took the gold from my account. No one that's taking that order...
Dude, those goblins don't care about wizarding law.
Is it goblins handling the order, though?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're selling him the firebolt. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the people that are actually giving the firebolt... I
don't think they're getting the firebolt, but I think if it's an order like that, I think the people selling the firebolt will give the order to a goblin, and nobody but a goblin is going to know who Vault 3711 belongs to. Only a goblin would know that is the Black Vault.
I agree. If it was just a goblin thing, they don't care. They just they just care about the literal gold in the transaction. I give you that.
Well, and all the firebolt people care about is that they get their gold from Gringotts. I don't think anybody's asking, where is this gold coming from?
No one's seeing an order form that says Sirius Black wants to make this transaction.
Because it doesn't say Sirius Black. It says Harry Potter is getting gold from this vault.
From Sirius Black's vault.
Go get this money from this vault. And
I don't know.
The goblins know that that's Sirius Black's vault, and goblins are like, yeah, let's go get this gold.
I feel like someone
Who cares if some wizards threw this wizard into the prison?
I don't know. I feel like someone other than goblins, because I agree with you wholeheartedly on the goblin bit. I feel like someone would look at that order form and just be like, that's weird. Like, no?
All people care about is money.
Well, that's the world, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, Sirius does come in clutch with the permission to Hogsmeade, which makes Harry quite happy in this whole thing.
No more sneaking through tunnels.
Nope, Sirius coming in clutch, as he seems like he always has been, even though we haven't been told it was him until now. Yeah, that's pretty much the chapter. I just want to have a fun fact about the Marauders map real quick.
Okay.
Because it's just a fun fact. There's not a whole lot that me or you don't know about the Marauders map, because most of it's told in this book. But the whole thing about the Marauders map, we've questioned on this podcast, how did it end up in Filch's cabinet in the first place?
Oh my god, is that out there?
Yeah.
I don't know this, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So it ends up, the Marauders map was taken by Filch in the last year of the Marauders' schooling.
Okay, that's what I always imagined.
Yep. They had overreached on one of their endeavors.
Really? I always kind of imagined they let Filch take it so it would be there for future troublemakers.
They overreached and it got confiscated.
They overreached in what way?
All it says is quote-unquote overreached.
Where's this from?
This is from the Wizarding World. And that's a spoiler that I can't say about the Marauders map. But yeah, it was taken by Filch in the last year of the Marauders' schooling after they had overreached on one of their endeavors. So that's how the Marauders map ended up there.
Wild.
After that fun fact on the Marauders map, let's take a pause. We will take a break, and we'll come back with the spoiler section, and then we might have another break and just do a whole book discussion. So join us for
the flip side.
We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about in the spoilers, so we'll be right back.
you foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach!
All right, so we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 22, Owl Post again. And I wanted to double back on that Snape-Albus conversation about Black escaping. Like, they have to eventually have a conversation, because do you think Snape just shows up one day at Grimmauld Place for the Order of the Phoenix, sees Sirius sitting there and goes, what?
Well, okay. I mean,
Like-
Snape's not an idiot. Snape knows Dumbledore is clearly not upset about Black having escaped. And
Right.
so I think it would be a very basic conversation of like, hey, heads up, Black's back in the Order of the Phoenix, and I
Just
helped
deal
him
with it?
escape, so you work through whatever you gotta work through and then show up at the meeting. Okay, thanks, bye.
I can't imagine that conversation. Like, how does Albus even approach that? Like, hey,
How does Albus approach anything?
just catch him in passing,
He
like in the
tells-
hallway at Hogwarts.
He tells Snape what he thinks Snape needs to know, and then he dips. He's like, Snape tries to get more information out of him all the time, and Dumbledore doesn't give him any more than he wants Snape to have.
I don't know. I feel like Snape, as we've talked about, I think he would be owed an explanation. Like, why is that guy sitting at the table? Like, all Snape knows is the original facts of the case, which all point to Sirius being the murderer. I just thought that conversation between Snape and Albus would be an interesting one, because Snape feels as though Sirius is still a murderer that also caused the death of Lily. And he'd be like, wait, why is he
I've
there?
never thought that Snape blames... I've always thought Snape blames himself for Lily's death more than he blames Sirius.
He definitely blames himself, for sure. But Sirius, in his thinking, would have been the one to actually give up the Secret Keeper spot.
I wonder if the first time Dumbledore had that conversation with Snape is when Snape had to go back undercover. And that's more the reason that he had to have that conversation with Snape, because Snape is then going to have to be around Pettigrew again. And so he needed to know that Pettigrew was actually the one who gave up Lily and James.
That's a twisted position to put Snape in.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really...
It's a very Dumbledore position to put Snape in.
Well, that's 100% truth. Well, but that's the whole part of... That's why I asked the question, is Albus is playing a really jacked up game here. And I don't think he even knows to what level it's jacked up. But he just keeps playing with a very fine line of any one of these things can fall horribly apart and ruin everything. And I don't know. He's just thinking that he's playing chess and everybody else.
Dumbledore to a T.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, we'll move on from the Snape Albus. Fudge drops a lot of interesting quotes in this chapter. I'd watch out for him if I were you, Dumbledore. And
That just blew my mind. I did not remember that line.
I
I,
didn't-
was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny.
I
Like,
didn't
not
remember that
funny,
either.
But
yeah, I didn't remember that line either. I'm like, wow, Fudge
yeah.
was really on
Dropping
the...
that foreshadowing right
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, and I'm sure Dumbledore in this moment is like, "Oh, you don't even know." Like, you don't even know. But yeah. And then Fudge goes on to say that he'll send the Dementors back to Azkaban because they're, quote, completely out of control.
Right.
He acknowledges
Never did he imagine a Dementor trying to kiss a student.
he has this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm shocked Dumbledore didn't bring this up in the trial with Harry in Order of the Phoenix and just be like, do you remember saying to me when they were all at Hogwarts and they attacked? By the way, who did they attack? Oh, they attacked Harry. Oh, so they have like a history with Harry. Oh, whatever. It's interesting. It was just a very interesting line by Fudge. A couple of them. And then I think you wanted to talk a little bit more about the connection between Pettigrew and Harry.
Oh, I just really enjoyed reading that conversation because there's so many moving parts to how this debt comes back. That Dumbledore is 100% right. This debt saves Harry's life. But then the added part of it that this debt also ends up being the cause of Pettigrew's death. Like, it's just kind of an interesting little circle
It's
to me.
a morbid circle.
Yeah.
And I only feel bad for Pettigrew in the sense of he is such a pawn. Like, he is literally the definition of a pawn in that he is just being used by bigger, better players to get what they ultimately want.
But doesn't he kind of set himself up in that position, the conversation we had of he's always going to keep himself an escape hatch? He kind of sets himself up to be used as pawn when you do stuff like that.
Yes. He the problem is he's playing survivor mode. He's trying to be with the biggest bully on the yard at that given point. But it's like playing with fire because, I mean, if you get too close and you happen to spurn said bully at any point, that wrath can then flip onto you, which he knows. That's why he's playing all angles at all times. But obviously, Voldy's not an idiot either.
Right.
So he's like, that was a problem. How can I fix said problem? He comes up with a solution, which is brilliant on his part.
Something that was supposed to be this, like, merciful gift and, like, point of pride for Pettigrew.
What a truly evil act by Voldy, which we talk about evil in a lot of different ways in this book, and, you know, we'll get to it with Umbridge, and we've talked about it with Marge in a different, you know, thing, which we can get to later, but honestly, I don't feel like we get too many, like, wow, Voldy is really, like, evil. Bad, yeah, murderer, sure, but not, like, we don't see that, like, despicable mustache twirling, like, evilness. It's just blatant, like, aggression, usually.
Yeah.
But here, this was an evil move of, like, I act like I'm giving you something good, and in the end, this will kill you.
It's a cruel twist.
And I'm sure Voldy 100% knows, like, at some point, this will be his death. Like, I'm sure Voldy is fully aware of it. That's why he does it. So.
And even if he doesn't know for sure something's going to come of it, he would rather hedge his bets. So, like, yeah, there's a chance he's going to feel guilty over what he did to this kid's parents. And I need to plan for that.
And not only that, but he knows, hey, this guy's flipped before.
True.
He flipped for me. I wonder if he'll flip again. How can I get him if he flips again? How dare he flip again on me?
I don't think that was going to be Pettigrew flipping, though. Had his hand not killed him, I don't think Pettigrew was going to all of a sudden be a member of the Order of the Phoenix helping out.
It's not even
in Shell Cottage.
Like, the thing that gets Pettigrew is not even necessarily the act of saving Harry Potter. It's hesitation. The fact that the thought went through his head, like, I should let him go. That's what killed him. Like, it was a hesitation of killing Harry.
Well, didn't he have to? Like, isn't that the magic of the life debt that's between him and Harry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we've had some conversations on, like, old, deep magic.
That's another reason I like that conversation. Because I feel like this is the first time it's not, like, the love magic. It's more just, like, a different type of old magic. It's still a bond. It's a deep bond. It's definitely not love by any means. So, like, it's an interesting twist to it. You know, like, these bonds that old magic can weave between two people.
So, do you think Voldy knows specifically what happened in the Shrieking Shack?
I've wondered that.
Do you think Pettigrew definitely doesn't tell him?
But I think when Pettigrew goes and is the one taking care of Voldemort before he comes back, I think Voldemort could have gotten every single speck out of... I don't think Pettigrew had the power to withstand the, like... I can't say that L word.
Legilimens?
Yes, that Voldemort would have placed on him to find out everything.
I think... Well, Snape obviously doesn't tell him because he wasn't aware of Pettigrew even being in the Shrieking Shack at that moment. So he wouldn't know about it. But Pettigrew might almost say it as a gloating thing. Like, oh, Harry let me live and now I'm here. Like, he almost could say it as a gloating thing, and Voldy's just sitting there going like, did he know? Good to know. File that one away for later. Good to know. But that, you know, Voldy likes to almost not ignore, but he likes to...
he forgets about...
older, deeper magic. Yeah. Then that's why he might have known that. Or he might have just been like, dude, you flip a lot. I'm going to end that right here, right now.
Yeah.
And if you flip on me, you ain't surviving it.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have just been plain and simple that way. Who knows? But anyway, yeah, a lot of cool stuff in this chapter, actually, which was awesome. But, I did want to get to one more Remus Lupin. How much do you know about Lupin and Tonks' courtship? This was a deep dive that I did recently on Lupin, along with his werewolf stuff.
Pre-Half-Blood Prince or post?
I would assume it'd be around the time of Order of the Phoenix when they put that together.
Okay. Not a ton. I mean, I may or may not have read some fan fiction.
There are some interesting things on Lupin that I hadn't gotten to yet, and one of them was Lupin and Tonks, when they started their missions for the Order. Obviously, Lupin was quite thrilled every time he was on a mission with Tonks. But J.K. illustrated a conversation that they had one night out on a mission. And
On Wizarding World?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tonks apparently said, while they were staking out whatever, Tonks said, wow, it's amazing that he's still handsome after all those years in Azkaban. Right. Yeah. Lupin did not take that comment well and said, with like an eye roll, he always gets the girl. Yep. And Tonks responded, you know who I'd fallen for if you weren't so down on yourself.
Aww.
So yeah, that's kind of the beginnings of their back and forth. But I also found it interesting. She dropped a couple of other tidbits on Lupin. Apparently, Albus himself showed up at the Lupin household just before Remus turned 11. And he himself recruited. So he didn't send a letter like to Harry.
Okay.
He himself showed up at the door of the Lupins and was like, hey.
I can see that, because I think that's going to take a little more persuasion.
Mm-hmm. Supposedly, Albus had spies and knew of Greyback's actions. And that's why he showed up at the door of the Lupins and was like, no, he should come to Hogwarts. I got him. So that was an interesting fun fact. And then, because you're on the podcast, and I have to get this name in.
What we got?
JK gave a little bit more on the battle that took Lupin's life. And obviously, Lupin was killed by Dolohov. And the difference, she said, in the battle was not necessarily skill. It was that Lupin had essentially had months and upon months and upon months of shielding and defensive magic. Whereas Dolohov, on the other hand, had months and months and months of aggressive killing magic. And that was the difference between their battle. One had spent so many times shielding, the other so many times attacking that Lupin...
He was just too slow attacking?
Yeah. He wasn't as... His dueling skills had diminished in those months.
You know what I always imagined happening? That while he was in the midst of his duel with Dolohov is when he also realized that Tonks had entered the battle. Like, he thought Tonks was safe at home watching Teddy. Mm-hmm. And that moment of distraction, seeing Tonks, was the moment that Dolohov was able to get past his defenses.
Could be too. Yeah.
But that's an interesting fact.
Yeah. It was just something that caught my eye. A couple of things on Lupin that I hadn't shared before.
Bertha Jorkins is still more important than Dolohov.
It's a debate that we're going to have.
We get to have it the next book.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe she pulled out a Bertha Jorkins. Okay, anyway. We'll take a time out here. We'll take a little time out, and then we're going to come back with our highlights of the book, our book discussion, book wrap-up, if you will, and we'll also look toward the Goblet of Fire. So hang with us, and we'll be right back.
You foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach!
All right, so we're back, and we're going to just have a book/podcast wrap-up of Prisoner of Azkaban, because I can't believe we're done.
Oh, you're going to make me cry.
I know. I think it's safe to say it's one of our favorite books in the series. I think it is yours, right?
Yes, it is absolutely my favorite book.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, which you can get into. But some things that I kind of just wanted to reminisce on, if you will. from this, I loved the discussions that we had on Peter Pettigrew. I thought our deep dives on who he is as a character were just awesome. And I think my favorite part of doing this podcast is picking out, I know you're going to bring up Bertha Jorkins, and you can get a whole, I will devote a whole podcast to just you breaking down Bertha Jorkins as a character. But I think that's one of our strengths as a podcast, is kind of picking out characters that most people just have a surface glance of and a surface view of, and have only accepted that surface view as the only view. And there's not. To JK's credit, a lot of these characters have very full, in-depth, convoluted.
They're all human. Like,
yeah,
everybody's got. I liked discussing his motivations.
Yeah.
I feel like we really tried to like think about why he did what he did.
And we kind of, gone about it throughout multiple chapters and multiple episodes. But I love those conversations. I liked our Aunt Marge conversation from all the way back in like chapter 2.
Oh my gosh, I know. That seems so long
It
ago.
does seem like a really long time ago, but
It was a dark one, but it was a good one.
she is awful.
Yeah.
She really
Yes,
is
she is.
awful.
Yes, she
And
is.
I like the writing because it's real. It's real writing.
Mhm.
There are people that exist like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I also hate it because there are people like that, and it's just like, oh my gosh.
When you're going to your book, you consider an escape. You don't want to be reminded of
Right.
how awful people can be.
Exactly. So again, for my money, she might be the worst character. I think my phrase was page for page or chapter by chapter.
Something like that.
Something like that, like pound for pound for a fighter, but for the amount of words that she actually gets, she might be the worst. Because Umbridge gets a whole book, more than a book.
I think she's definitely the cruelest with her words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if she was given an avenue like Umbridge and Voldy,
Mhm.
I think she would be right on their level. They'd be what would be the opposite of a golden trio? Like, I don't know.
The dark trio.
The dark trio? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, that's an interesting chapter for sure. Also, we had a new guest member join the
Yay!
podcast. We had Jen join.
It was very fun.
Our only Slytherin, or close to Slytherin, however you want to define it, member of our crew. She was on the Gryffindor versus Ravenclaw chapter and the Snape's Grudge chapter. I was happy to talk some Quidditch with her. She's one of my fellow big sports nuts, so that was really fun. We had lots of Quidditch in this book,
Yeah,
all of the
there's
Quidditch.
a lot of Quidditch in this book.
So we're happy to have Jen on. She'll hopefully be on quite a lot more during our Goblet of Fire and so on. I know her favorite book is Half-Blood Prince, so that'll be interesting to get her views on that.
Definitely.
Especially because it is not our favorite book.
Yeah, I'm really
So-
intrigued to hear why it's her favorite book.
Same.
I'm excited to hear.
So, but obviously the biggest thing I think that came out of this podcast,
Oh, good lord.
I know, is the great Trelawney debate, and I will take full blame for this because this was my thing that just spiraled into debate after debate after.
Die on. Molly is now dead to me.
Yeah. Just because
She might have come back to life by bringing up Downton Abbey, but yeah.
that took on a life of its own that not even I had predicted. the whole Trelawney thing, and believe me, many people have had their input on that. I'm not on the island because thankfully Molly at least gets where I'm coming. Obviously, you and I got into a massive throwdown about it halfway through. You even, as you listened to one of the previous chapters to prep for this episode, you gave me some flack for Trelawney Thought. She comes up a lot in 5 and a lot in 7. So she'll be there. We'll still talk about her. Hopefully not in as creative detail as we did in this book, but we got introduced to her, so it's fine. Yeah, those were some of my highlights from this book's podcast. What about you? Anything that jumps out?
I mean, just any conversation to have during this book is always a big one for me. I did really enjoy all the different Animagus conversations we had kind of throughout the different chapters and the episodes.
Your breakdown on it was great, by the way.
I enjoyed reading to be able to do my breakdown. I enjoyed learning about the whole process. But even just like the conversations you had with multiple people about like what it really means, animagus, communication. I really liked all of that, listening and partaking.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation I don't hear all that often being had.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like Peter, and Peter was a big part of those.
Yes.
But it goes back to some of those of just conversations that I don't hear often. And believe me, you and I are pretty ear to the ground on a lot of Harry Potter conversation.
What?
We do hear and read a lot. But I think we've had some unique conversations here that you can only
all
hear.
of the deep dives that we've had throughout this book, I feel like, I mean, like, I love this book. So the fact that there have been a couple of deep dives where I learned things that I didn't already know concerning things in this book, impressive.
I love when guests come on and give deep dives. It's awesome, always. But, like, having you and Molly and Elizabeth and Jen and Julie all come on and give deep dives, I'm like, I kind of want to have deep dives. So I had to,
You can be as cool as us. It's okay.
I had to start getting some deep dives in here. And I've got a couple more in the tank for future.
You know what the next deep dive I'm going to do? James Potter.
Shocking.
Because I'm not going to get to talk about him as much until probably book 5.
That's true.
And then it's not going to be very nice. I really have to come to his defense.
I'm surprised you haven't mentioned James more. Honestly, even in this book, you'd think he'd be mentioned more. And
Agreed.
And he's really not.
I want more mentions from Remus and Sirius in this book about James. I feel like the best parts of James we get in this book, we actually get from Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Like, I know we already talked about it in this chapter, but like...
Or from Harry, oddly. Like with the whole prongs thing and the whole...
True.
Yeah.
True. I think this is the most we get from Harry concerning James. I feel like from this point on, it's very Harry Lily heavy, which has always made me feel some type of way.
It gets Harry Sirius heavy for 2 books.
Which is fair. Which is, I'm kind of excited because it's been a very long time since I read Goblet of Fire. Or not Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Very long time. And with all of the accusations thrown around that Sirius gets confused about who Harry really is, I'm excited to see, because we've been reading the book so differently, if more James mentions jump out at me in Order of the Phoenix than I'm anticipating.
That's who I would expect to throw out a lot of James references, is Sirius, because of that fact. I think he does physically see a lot of James and Harry, obviously, like everybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, he kind of mentions it even in this book, like seeing him play Quidditch and seeing like him flying a hippogriff to save him is like, yeah, that's definitely something James would do. Like, this is a very James moment.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if Sirius doesn't like start.
But the most important one is when Dumbledore points out that James would have also saved Pettigrew.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, you James haters, remember that.
I don't think anybody can really be a James hater per se.
Snape's first memory. There are a lot of James haters out there.
I think it's more like maybe not the character, but like how. I think the flack that you get specifically is how can you be so pro James? I think that's where it really is.
What can I say? I'm special.
But anyway, that we've come up with a lot of weird ships during this book too.
That we have.
I liked Mrs. Shanks.
I liked that one, but my new favorite is definitely yours and Molly's for Snape Trelawney. What a fantastic couple. Oh my god. Totally shipping with you guys, 100%.
Could you imagine them like showing up at the Yule Ball next?
Oh my god, it'd be amazing.
What would that even look like?
She'd definitely have her insect sparkly dress on.
And him just obviously all black.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just like the idea of like, you know, the totally emo guy who wants to stand in the corner and hate everybody, and Trelawney with like her like scented perfumes and scarves, and just be like, like, oh my god, what a great couple.
I just loved our Madame Puttyfoot's like pull, and we're like going to that tea shop for, because that's right up her lane.
Yes.
She would totally go to a tea shop for Valentine's Day.
She would go to Madame Puttyfoot's for sure.
And I could, that would be a fanfic that I would love to read.
Snape would be Harry sitting there absolutely hating it and trying to figure out how to drink his tea without the confetti getting down his throat. Like, yeah. It'd be great.
He's like, how can I put some fire whiskey in this real quick? Like, how can I spice this up a little bit? Oh yeah, that. The ships have been good. I didn't even put that on my notes, but yeah, that's
been good. Yeah,
that has been a fun one. Yeah, it's been a good kind of collection of different conversations that we've had.
Dean and Seamus's
oh yeah,
friend tattoo. Yes.
Is
I
it
definitely
kinda
posted it to the Instagram.
Yes.
Yes. Dean proposing to Seamus.
Yes,
is the best.
It is wonderful.
God bless the fans who came up with that picture.
So I mentioned the Yule Ball. Well, we're going to Goblet of Fire and the Yule Ball.
We are, and I am excited.
I loved this book when I first read it.
Oh, who didn't?
And it just... Everything that I could possibly love about Harry Potter, I think, is in this book. Just, obviously, the Triwizard Tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Lots of adventure, getting a little more mature.
Yeah, the Quidditch World Cup, which we talk about. They hint here in this last chapter, I'll post again, that the Quidditch World Cup is coming and Ron might score tickets.
We talk about Cedric a lot.
Yes, I get to defend Cedric for a whole 700-page book against all of this Gryffindor hate towards him, which I don't even...
There's no hate. I don't have any hate towards Cedric.
I don't know, you and Julie were very negative towards Cedric. Even though he almost was a Gryffindor. He was skirting the line between Hufflepuff and Gryffindor. Mm-hmm. Oh, you would claim him proudly if he was a Gryffindor. What? Oh, come on.
Adam claims sparkly people.
That's a whole different franchise.
Doesn't matter. I don't hate Cedric.
I will quote that. We have it on recording. Anna says, I don't hate Cedric. When the first words out of her mouth will be an anti-Cedric thing when we talk about him. But whatever, that's fine. It's all good. I'm excited for Goblet of Fire. I love the book. It will be a long book. This is the first Titanic level sized book that we have. And there's 2 in a row, too. 5 is even longer.
Oh, yeah.
So buckle in, because we got a lot more discussions to have. But I can't wait. Goblet of Fire is...
It's gonna be album.
So good. I think I was looking at it, and there is a bunch of chapters before we even... Oh, no, 4 and 5, I think there's a good amount of chapters before we even get to Hogwarts, right?
Oh, yeah. 4 yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long time before we get to Hogwarts.
Right. So, and usually I'm not a huge fan of that. Like, these early chapters when he's at the Dursleys and being all like...
Well, yeah, but this is different.
Like
you said,
it's different.
Quidditch World Cup.
Yeah. So, and I think book 4 starts out very uniquely. With the
Frank!
Very unique chapter to start out on. So, and we have some really cool stuff coming out. We're upgrading our logo, and we might even have t-shirts and all kinds of stuff going on. So, yeah, we're growing quite well. So thank you to all that are listening weekly. We really, really appreciate it. We are hoping you're interacting with us on our Instagram and our Twitter.
Tell us if there's something new you want us to do besides all that.
Yeah. Interact with us. Let us know what you're thinking on all of these conversations, on the Pettigrew and the Trelawney debates and all of that. Let us know what you guys think.
As long as you're not on Dan's side.
And she would say that. That is essentially what our friendship is in a nutshell. But yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Come at me on the Trelawney takes. It's all good. But yeah, hit us up on Twitter and Instagram. Do you have anything else from Prisoner of Azkaban?
No.
No last minute James mentions?
I love you, James.
Nope, we're just going to end it right. We're going to end it on the Anna I love you mention. So for Anna, I'm Dan.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this super long episode, and we'll be back with Goblet of Fire.
Woo woo.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.